Hello, TNA fam, and welcome back to the Impact Zone podcast. We are here again to talk more TNA wrestling shenanigans. And, well, I don't know. This might be the episode that I don't know whether I really want to publish this out there too much because, I've said this, a lot. I want to put this disclaimer out here up front first so that people might not feel so bad, hopefully, at least. I know that people aren't really going to listen to this, I don't think, probably, because I want to talk about, the whole AEW situation right now. And I don't want to shit on them or whatever, because I think that some of the stuff that they've got going on is good. And I think, again, AEW is positive for the business. But I do think that there is some stuff there that, just isn't working. And I hear a lot of the same sort of rhetoric or commentary from a lot of people that are very deeply entrenched in it. I'm not very deeply entrenched in it. But things are not really going well there. And you can point to some of the things that it is, but it's sort of hard to figure out because in some ways, and I'm going to relate this back to TNA, I swear, but TNA had this problem too many years ago. Everyone was just negative on them. Everyone was negative on them for a long time, and they still sort of are. But I think that negativity is sort of fading in some ways because AEW is the new thing to hate. And I don't want to hate on them, but I just want to sort of say what's going wrong, kind of analyze it. I don't really ever talk about AEW except to say, what's happening here or what's happening there sometimes, or let's compare it to this, so this is more of a broader, let's talk about AEW. I don't actually know much about AEW that much, but I can see things are not going well, even from not knowing a whole lot, and only hearing bits and pieces here and there. I know things, there have been obviously positive and negative moments. Same for all wrestling companies. I don't want to paint them with a just broad brush of everything is shit or whatever else it is. But I think one of the biggest problems that I have noticed is that they just don't know what they're doing. They just, I've said this about TNA and WWE and basically any wrestling promotion here and there throughout the years that I've been producing these episodes on this podcast, is that sometimes it does feel like, well, where's the plan? Where's the next person coming along on the tracks for people to be like, okay, so are we going to get interested in this person? Where's the next feud with this other person? Because you can't just have two people there that are going to feud. You've got to have 5 or 6, 7 or 8 other people, and that's one problem right now with TNA is it's a very thin roster. I'm not going to just sugarcoat it and say nice things about TNA all the time. I say not good things about them sometimes. I don't want people to get this, oh, I'm just a TNA mark or whatever else it is, or a WWE mark or whatever else it is. I don't like a lot of the things that WWE does either. But it's just people taking offense or whatever, or taking it the wrong way or whatever again. But like I said, it seems very much like, I don't want to say it's like WCW, but it feels there's a lot of similarities that you can point to with AEW and WCW. It's a big money place, and a lot of people, and I also just the company itself, but a lot of people seem to be just like, oh, well, I'll go there because they're going to pay me some big money, and there's no real other thoughts than that. They're going to pay me, so I'll go there. Whatever. I don't really, I think their expectation is that somehow that they'll fit in, or that they'll be different, or whatever else it is. They won't be just another person that's already on a extremely bloated roster, and not a lot of those people are getting enough TV time or enough, you know, moments and things like that to really get themselves over and to really produce a TV show for, you know, whatever it is, 52 weeks out of the year, you know. Maybe, I don't know, but yeah, that's what I mean. Like, uh, you know, I just think that people are kind of like, oh, wrestlers are kind of like, ah, well, this is a free meal ticket, sort of thing, like, I don't know. I don't know whether that is the case or not, but I think some people are also so anti WWE, and it's not bad to be like, that isn't my jam or whatever else it is, but to be just so anti WWE or whatever else it is like, yeah, dude, yeah, they have some problems. They absolutely have their own problems and whatnot, especially in the TKO era. That's the one of the big things that I will say is like, dude, fuck your ticket prices, fuck your prices for all these things, and the convoluted manner of saying you have to get Raw over here and you have to get SmackDown over there and you can get NXT over here and then you can get this over here, you can get this pay-per-view over there, you can get this like what, like, my God, streamline things. Have one thing for everything. That's one thing that the WWE Network was good for, and it was cheap. It was $10 a month, or whatever, $9.99, but whatever. That's $10. You're not getting you're not getting that 1 cent unless you're paying online. I guess you were paying online, but whatever. You're not getting that real 1 cent, whatever. But anyway, is that a penny in the US? I don't know. I think that's what it is. I don't know. But anyway, I think another big problem is like the whole like AEW was new 5 or 6 years ago, and I think the honeymoon period has kind of come to an end. The honeymoon period of, oh, this shiny new thing, like has come to an end. And I could say that they've missed and they've fumbled people. Absolutely, they have. But it's not just saying that you fumble people, because TNA fumbled people, WWE fumbled millions of people probably, but like they're still both in business. NWA has fumbled people probably as much, and same with New Japan, same with probably a bunch of promotions, probably every promotion that they've fumbled people, but they're still in business. So it's not just fumbling, it's what do you do when you fumble. You need to, like, so to speak, you need to pick up the ball and run for the end zone. I don't know much about American football, but I know that that's one of the things. You pick up the ball and you keep going, sort of thing. You've got to not just fumble the ball and have it drop behind you and have it, intercepted by the other team or whatever, or taken by the other team or whatever. You don't want them to go down to their end zone and steal it off of you or whatever and score that way, So that's the thing that I think one of things AEW has done wrong is that they've fumbled and they've fumbled and they've fumbled and they've fumbled. And there's only so many fumbles that fans are willing to kind of like put up with, so to speak. And this is the same thing that happened in TNA. I know this. And I stopped watching TNA for a long period of time as well. But there were not just fumble issues, but there was a clear direction issue, I felt, with the company. And that's what a lot of people are feeling now with AEW. And it might take a few years. I don't know how they're going to... And that's the problem. It's also a perception problem. Like, oh, everything's shit here, so we're not going to care anymore. So, let's stop caring. And then people are just... falling out of it even worse because everyone's going, we can't be bothered caring, And that's another thing, like same with the wrestlers. Like sometimes it does feel like they're not really like, yeah, this is for me, and this is, I'm gonna be here, and I'm gonna put on the matches that I can put on, the best matches, even if I've only got 3 minutes in which to do it, or whatever it is. It does feel like a lot of people are like, there are certainly people that are on that roster that are trying hard, but it's also like a lot of people that would try hard are just like enjoying nice catering. And that's like the same problem that WWE had a few years ago, where it was like, here's all your really talented guys, but you're not using them, and it's hard to use everyone because as I said, they've got a very bloated roster. But you also need to focus in on, your SmackDown 6, so to speak. Pick 6 guys, 6 gals, whatever, that are in each division, and those are your core members. You can have guys and gals be multiple time champions and have different stories going along, but you can't stagnate. You cannot stagnate. You can have your two or three top guys, but you need to be bringing new people into that main event scene as quickly and as seamlessly as possible. You need to push people up into those positions. That's one of the things that I feel like it just isn't happening. And like, I can say the same thing for TNA, but again, like, AEW actually has a bunch of talent that they could push into their main event, whereas TNA, not so much. They only have a handful of talent that they've got. And yes, maybe they fumbled the ball on Ace Austin or whatever else it is and whatnot. They could have pushed him harder and whatnot. And same, they have Trey Miguel and some of these other guys, these younger. I don't really think they're quite ready to be like the guy or whatever else it is. But if you start saying, okay, we need to start making these guys feel like or anyone that's there, even if it's a tag team, okay, these guys are going to be an important tag team. We're going to push them. We're going to make them seem like they're a big deal and that people need to pay attention to them, or pay attention to this thing, or pay attention to that thing, so we're going to give them a main event. We're going to give them this thing. We're going to do this thing with them. We're going to build this story with them. Look at, like, if one of your biggest prospects is like Darby Allin, like, you've built a whole bunch of other people, but Darby is still kind of like floating in that mid card. So what are you going to do with him? You've got to kind of try to push him. You've got to keep pushing him. You've got to keep saying, okay, we're going to give him a main event. Maybe he's not going to win, but he's going to get that main event. Then he's going to get another one, and another one, and another one. So, heaps of them. Like really close together, especially like on TV, you can do this very easily. On pay-per-view, it's a little bit harder, but keep pushing him into that position. And you can apply this to literally anyone. Same with the women, same with anything. Give them the main events picture 1 week or whatever else it is, or every few weeks, or same thing. Like, okay, we want to push Darby and such, or whoever it is, and another person. We want to push Darby for the world title, and we want to push this person for the women's title. Okay, guess what you do? Tag team them up in a match against the champions. Then that's a TV main event that leads to the pay-per-view. And you either let your guys and your gals there that are non-champions get the win, so that they can kind of look good and look like, oh, maybe they will, win the belts. And then they do win the belts. So you've got that like, oh shit, that was foreshadowing type thing. It really was foreshadowing. It wasn't just fake foreshadowing where they won and then it was like, oh, they couldn't pull the trigger or didn't pull through somehow, or something else happened, or whatever it was, So those are the sorts of things that I find that I think that they need to do. And the same thing for TNA. They need to do the same thing in some ways. They need to find not a young guy, but they need to find a younger guy that isn't established, start going, okay, we're going to find a path for you. We're going to start putting you in programs with, long term. Maybe Leon Slater is in that position. Like, I hope so. I do hope so. I'd like to see that here, like, when you're the guys and gals that you've invested time in, and same for AEW, is going to come from the bottom to the top. You've seen their journey from when they started. They're your guy, even so, like, even if they've been wrestling for a few years or whatever. It's like, these are our guys. We've invested in them. Like, why do the fans still care? Why do they still tune in? Because they have that investment. That's what people had for WCW and ECW until they went out of business. And that's why when ECW had its reunion shows, people were still passionate about it, because they still had that love and that desire and that thing to see ECW. So they came back in their droves to see ECW, because they were going to see the thing that they had watched for 10, 15 years or whatever it was, and that they were so passionate about seeing. And, that's what they got out of it. Like, they got that enjoyment out of the pro wrestling product that they got to see every single week. Even if something was bad one week, or, some segment stuck or stunk or whatever else it was, there was always something else that brought them back and continued to bring them in, and all of this other stuff. So that's what you've got to do. You've got to have more good than bad. If the things are just coming off bad, it's time to sort of stop, okay? And say, okay, we need a bit of a reset. And the thing is, like, no one person can run 1,000 ships, so to speak, if you know what I mean. So if Tony wants to be in charge of the overall booking of everything, then he needs delegates. He needs somebody to say, okay, you are in charge of Ring of Honor. You will come to me with all the major decisions and whatnot, but you are in charge of Ring of Honor or whatever. You're in charge of Collision. You're in charge of this. You're in charge of that. You come to me with everything. We discuss it. Then we decide, and then we have a vision for 6 months, a year, whatever it is, of this is what we're going to do. This is when we're going to do it. This is why we're going to do it. This is how we're going to do it, etc., etc. It needs to be, everything needs to be pitched. Actually, this is the same thing for TNA. Everything needs to be pitched. This is how we're going to do this. This is when we're going to do this. This is why we're going to do this. 6 months in advance, a year in advance, whatever it is. Okay, this is when we're going to do this. This is how we're going to do this. Or we're just going to see how the audience reacts to this. Or this is our plan, and, hopefully the audience reacts well to it, like, kind of thing. Because that is the ultimate thing, is like, well, the audience is still hungry to see this person, see Santana, see Darby Allin, see whoever it is, win this belt. So it is time to say, okay, we have invested 5 or 6 years into this person, and yet we haven't elevated him. There are still other people that are in your company that, you could elevate as well, but that's, this is the longest outlier, or this is one of the longest outliers. So you just have to start saying, okay, it's time. We've got to start making a story and making a journey for him, or for whoever it is, again, but, he's the most obvious candidate for a lot of people and whatnot. So you've got to sit there and go, okay, cool, right. And you might say that for Leon, but, like, he's only been there for a year or whatever it's been, and now he's the X Division champion. And I know that's not a lot, but, like, for the first year or so being in the company, that's not too bad. Like that's a good start, you know. And now you've got a trajectory, you know. You've got an already established story. You've got an already established character. You've got a same thing for anyone. They've got an established lore, an established history, and they've got the fan base behind them. So the only thing to do, and pulling, when I say pull the trigger, I don't mean just give them the title. I mean pull the trigger on saying, okay, we're going to try to do something with this person. We're going to try to make them into our guy, you know. And that's hard because, like, you're always looking at the people, especially if you're in business. I said this before. The guys and gals that are drawing the most money are the guys and gals that you should be pushing. So it's always kind of tough to go in that new direction because you have your old time guys, so to speak, that are still drawing a lot of money and still really popular, but you need to move forward because you can't rely on those old heads forever. You can't rely on your John Moxleys forever. You can't rely on your Carters forever. Okada is great. Okada's amazing. Kenny Omega's amazing. But you can't rely on those guys forever. They've still got a lot of shelf life left, but you can't rely on them forever. You cannot sit there and keep going, oh, well, they're drawing us the most money, so we'll put the belt on. No, that's what WCW did, and they found themselves in a position, that position of continuing to do the same thing. Go back to Hulk Hogan, go back to Kevin Nash, go back to this person, go back to that person, because they're still big draws. You need to make a new draw. You need to make your Stone Cold Steve Austin. You need to make your John Cena's. You need to make your Roman Reigns. Even though that experiment with Roman Reigns didn't really work for like 5 or 6 years or whatever it was. I don't even know now. But, you know, like it finally worked when they said, okay, he can be a heel. Which is all it freaking took, you know, like for him to, you know, be taken seriously, so, you know, instead of being a suffering succotash or whatever, you know. And maybe some of those changes, even in somebody that is, you know, a very established babyface, people get bored of the same thing very quickly. People aren't bored of Darby, but, like, at a certain point, if he can't, like, overcome the odds or get to that point, people will lose interest unless he turns his character around and does something different, becomes a heel or whatever. So that's a rehab sort of character thing, you know, like, okay, we've drawn out you for too long being in this position, and now, you know, we have to go from where we're at and turn you the other side so that we can rehab you up, because otherwise, you know, people aren't going to buy it. So that's where you're at right now. Like, that's my perspective of it. And, like, I haven't really ever been a booker or whatever, but I've been in wrestling, and I've watched wrestling for decades. And like WWE is on somewhat of a downswing in some ways as well, because like they're scalping out, well, not scalping, but they're like overcosting their tickets. They're doing a whole lot to alienate the everyday people that really kept that thing running and really kept, you know, the tickets flying, because like the tickets were actually somewhat, you know, affordable, and everything was affordable and easily accessible in most ways. If AEW wants to get back to that position, and if TNA wants to get into a position that's somewhat like that, it's hard to appeal to that audience, but you need to appeal to that audience in some ways. I know that AEW, they wanted to be like the antithesis of WWE, but realistically, you can't be the antithesis of WWE completely, because the only way you're ever going to get the more mainstream and the bigger audiences is if you're offering something that is similar to WWE, but different enough that it has its own identity and yet is still accessible for most people. So yes, you can have your blood and guts and whatnot and that sort of stuff. I don't think that that's a problem, but I think you need to tone it down. I think you should keep that to being special once in a blue moon, once in the very special circumstances that it's really needed on pay-per-view at the times that it's, absolutely needed, not every single week, every single other minute, whatever it is. If you've got a hardcore wrestler or a guy who is a hardcore style wrestler, like Abyss, Sami Callihan, whatever it is, Sabu, whoever, whatever, Mick Foley, whatever, they're going to bring out the tags, they're going to do this, they're going to do that. Okay, cool, that's their thing or whatever. That's their gimmick, effectively. They're not there to be the thumbtacks, the tacks, the chairs, whatever, the tables, whatever it is their thing. Okay, instead of being like, we're just going to have all these chairs and all these tables and all these other things. And, it's not like as bad as like the deathmatch wrestling. But again, it's like, you've got all these things going on and none of it means anything because you've got no focus. You need to focus. You need to go, okay, we need to say the hardcore stuff needs to either be specific to the end of this feud or to end of feuds and whatnot. So it needs to be relegated to a special event, not saying this is Thursday in December or whatever. This is a Sunday in December, so it's Hell in a Cell time or whatever. That's the problem that WWE had. They were like, it's December, so Hell in a Cell time or what, I don't remember when it was, but you know what I mean? Like they kept doing that thing where they had, this is this time of month, so it's time for this event. No matter what anything else is happening, it's time for this event. Instead of it being like the Royal Rumble where you have a Royal Rumble match and there are other matches on that show, they're just like, it's Hell in a Cell, so every match is Hell in a Cell. You couldn't have just like one or two Hell in a Cells or whatever it was, or Money in the Bank, like perfect example, same thing. Like a couple of matches were Money in the Bank matches and a couple of the other matches were regular ass matches. So again, maybe that idea has flown the boat, so to speak, in some ways, but the idea needs to be that you will see only a few of those sorts of things. Like, if TNA at Turning Point decides to have, a Full Metal Mayhem match for some reason, I don't know. But it wouldn't, or if they said next year we're going to have TNA Lockdown again. Okay, cool. You can have TNA Lockdown again, but you can't have the full show be all these lockdown matches. They would have to say, okay, one or two matches will be lockdown matches or whatever it is. But the other matches on that show won't be. The other will just be regular, basic, simple, straightforward matches. We're only going to put in the few matches that absolutely need this stipulation, or that absolutely need blood, or that absolutely need to have this character who their specialty is X, Y, or Z. And that's another thing, like, make a wrestler indicated on a specific weapon. Mick Foley was the barbed wire bat. Triple H was the sledgehammer. Like those things. The Dudleys were the tables. The Hardys were the ladders. Edge and Christian were the chairs. Like those weapons started to symbolize them, so they became associated with those weapons more and more and more. So associate a person or whatever with a specific weapon. If you're going to have a person, Sting, baseball bat, okay, so that's out. You can't really do the sledgehammer because that's Triple H. You could still say somebody is the new tables guys because, you've had Public Enemy and the Dudleys be tables guys. So you could have somebody else be the tables guys. Edge and Christian are there right now, so they're the chairs guys. You can't really have... if somebody else uses the chairs on them, the concerto on them, that's fine because it's referencing back to them. Or if they're trying to feud with them, or they're already feuding with them, that's fine because it's like they're using their thing to attack other people or whatever else it is, So that feud is still ongoing or contained with them, that's fine. But if you start saying, okay, let's make somebody else the ladders guys or whoever, whatever. Let's same with Ultimate X. Make your own stipulation. Make your I know that they've kind of made some of their own stipulations, but they haven't made many of their own stipulations. They haven't made an Ultimate X. They haven't made a Hell in a Cell. They haven't made an Elimination Chamber. They haven't made the Royal Rumble. And I know the Royal Rumble wasn't WWE's, but you know what I mean. They haven't made their own real gimmick matches. And you can I suppose you could boil down all hardcore matches or all matches that are weapons matches into hardcore matches or whatever. Extreme Rules. I think Last Man Standing and things like that or whatever, those fall into hardcore style matches or Extreme Rules matches or variants of those matches. What's the Texas Death Match? That's very similar. A lot of those, when you start calling it whatever brawl in the city that you're in, it's fine. That's fine. But it's not any different. It's not a Chicago street fight. It's just a street fight. But it's in Chicago, so we're calling, and it sort of sounds all right, so it's a Chicago street fight. That's perfectly fine. But there's no difference from a Chicago street fight to an Atlanta street fight, or to a New York street fight, or to a street fight in general. They're all the same thing. They're just happening in Chicago, and it sounds cool to say Chicago street fight, or New York street fight, or whatever it is. So they just need to do those things of that are basic, that are simple, that get more general fans. Yes, you can still have your hardcore elites shows, but you need a general show. You need to have a show that is not PG, but is for everyone, is for little kids and families and for people that used to watch WWE and want to watch something that's similar, but don't want to just watch WWE, or maybe they do, but they're also looking for an alternative. They want something different. And I think take something out of TNA's playbook that they did sort of used the Bound for Glory series. If you were going to try to make yourselves a more of a sport-based thing, take that concept, say, okay, cool, what we're going to do is take that same concept, so when we're going to have a full series of matches over the next month or 2 months or whatever else it is, and whenever you win a match by pinfall, by submission, by whatever means or whatever, you get so many points, and then at a certain point after, so many other points, you go through the, you know, the brackets to, like, the same thing with, like, the King of the Ring tournament. Do that, but do a different take on it. Like, let's do, this tournament, but it's now for the title. It's now for the WWE title or whatever. It works really well when the title's vacated. It doesn't work as well when the title is, like, held by somebody, but you could have the champion be in that title sequence or whatever it is, and then lose the title somewhere along that line, and then crown a new champion at the end, type thing. You could almost like the G1, so you could almost do that. Like, there's multiple ways you can do different things. So just find some things that make your identity more. Like, what is the soul of AEW? You have to show us, like, you have to, and same for TNA, keep showing us what it is that you're about. Like, it's not just, saying, like, look at TNA, even in the last few years, like, they made the 8-4-1 match. It's a new match type that I think is kind of cool. I don't know whether a lot of people like it or not, but it's like, that's a new concept. They went, okay, how could we make a new concept match, or how could we make something, work, and let's innovate, They didn't just sit around and say, or I don't know whether they actually took it off somebody, or they took the idea from somebody, but, like, maybe they did, I don't know, but, like, they might have gone back to something and they said, hey, maybe we could do that, but let's do it like this. Like, the triple threat, and the fatal 4-way were innovations in their time. There's always been innovations, and there's always been different twists on things. So even just making a little twist on something, to say, it can't be too much, but you have to have something else, I feel, because otherwise it feels like you're just doing the same thing. Like, and I know some people say, oh, it's fine to do this. No, I don't think it's fine to do the same thing. I think you have to do something different, but it is tough sometimes. So I just wanted to come along and have some thoughts about it. As I said, it's an interesting time, and I think, like, that's the thing that they've got to look at. Unfortunately, like, it might it might piss off the really hardcore viewers who want this straight other side complete to WWE, but make a show for them. Make a very specific show. This is, not the Ring of Honor show, but, like, this is the other antithesis AEW show that's just for the absolute most hardcore people that want to watch what we're doing as a promotion at our core. But this is the other show that's for effectively WWE light, or whatever, people that are coming over, so that we can compete with WWE. That's the idea. One show to compete with WWE and be as accessible as possible. Another show to be for the hardcore fans besides Ring of Honor, because I feel like Ring of Honor is sort of its own thing. And then, just have a handful of guys, handful of gals on each show, and, like, reduce the number of titles. Like, the Ring of Honor thing can be its own thing, but, like, beyond that, like, you should have one title for AEW, and that's it. Like, one world title, one mid-card title, one set of tag titles. That's it. Like, same for the women. One main main event title, one maybe mid card, and one maybe tag team title. That's how it should be. It shouldn't be like having all these other titles, and it's like, what the hell? Is like, you've got 2 or 3 mid card titles, or whatever, and 2 or 3 women's mid card titles. It's like, what the heck is going on? So it's hard to follow. When you've got so many different prizes and whatnot, and that sort of thing. So make it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. Because the less titles there are, the more prestigious they sort of are. And yes, like, I agree with this thing that WWE, somebody said about WWE, that like when Roman Reigns was there and it was like he's on his reign of terror effectively, or whatever it is. It's like, well, no one's going to go up and beat him realistically, so you need another prize for everyone to go for, which makes another title somewhat valuable. But like, realistically, like, that title is always going to feel secondary or tertiary to the other titles that were on him, because those were the main titles and whatnot. So you're shooting yourself in the foot sort of even more. Because when they created that title, they were basically saying, well, no one here is good enough to even challenge Roman Reigns. Because, we know he ain't losing, sort of thing. And we know that, there's no point, because people won't, maybe they won't believe, but now they really won't believe, because now we've had to create another title just for, people to have a secondary option, to have something else to go after while Roman does his thing, instead of going, yeah, we'll at least give them the chance to go up against Roman, even if, they're not going to win, because then at least everyone is fighting for the same thing. It's not like we have this other title that is now, less prestigious and whatnot than that title, and automatically, and also now we've devalued it by saying, hey, obviously no one can win that belt, or no one can be a legitimate contender to that title or to that person in this division. And the thing is, I get that it's saying, hey, well, you can tell more stories or whatever else it is. If you're going to tell more stories, then they've got to be consistent. That's fine if there's 2 consistent world titles and they're completely separate. And I said this before with, like, if you're going to do a brand split, you don't do it half-hearted. You say, okay, cool, right. So we're going to have mostly, like, we're going to have the challengers, like the world title challengers, be on Raw or be on SmackDown, whatever. Doesn't matter which show they're on, as long as, like, a bunch of them are on that one show. So mostly they're going to come from that show. Then you go to the other show, and again, it doesn't matter which one, and say, okay, you've got a lot of the B stuff, but we're going to put so much B stuff on here. We're going to put everything else on here, or almost everything else on here, so that there's, it feels like here's a bunch of young guys or young gals, and or both of them, on this show. So here you've got your modern era SmackDown 6 for men and women, sort of thing. And over there you've got, your Raw established guys or whatever, or your SmackDown established guys, whatever else it is. Either your young up-and-comers or your, already main event sort of guys or gals. And you could do that differently. You could be like, okay, the men's title is going to be on SmackDown or Raw or whatever, doesn't matter. And the other one's going to be, and the women's one is going to be on the other show. So that, you have, like, it is cool to have a diverse kind of locker room, and the locker room kind of going for both of the major prizes, so to speak. So, and the thing is, like, if you don't have the world titles, the main titles on those shows, the secondary titles are going to feel like more major in some ways, because like that's the top prize when you're watching that show. You know, the other title doesn't, it exists kind of, but it's not really there that much. So you've got this mid card of women on one show, but then you've got, or whatever it is, but then you've got the men main eventing, you know, or whatever it is. Or you've got, you know, this mid card of men, and then you've got the women main eventing. You know what I mean? So same with the tag titles. You need to have them on one show or the other. And then you need to say, okay, cool. When we've got that, you know, there, we need to have another thing on the other side. So, you know, you need to divvy it up. You know what I mean? If you're going to have, I don't know, the women's world title on Raw or whatever, again, doesn't matter, then you have to have the mid-card title on the other show. So that, and you probably have to have like the tag team titles on one of those shows. So it's really tough, because it's like you don't want to divide the waters too much of having too many of one sort of thing together, like like women's mid-card title and women's like mid-card tag team titles. You know, you don't want to have too much of that together, but you don't want to have like the mid-card mixing with the main event, if you know what I mean. You want to elevate people into that main event, but you also don't want to make it like too obvious that they're getting into that main event. So it's harder to, like, you could almost have like a men's roster on one and a women's roster on the other. But then it's like, I don't know, you know, where are you going to go from there? Like, pay-per-views are now going to be between Raw and SmackDown. Raw, like maybe Raw is the men's brand and women's brand is SmackDown. I don't know. Or is it the women's brand is Raw and the men's brand is SmackDown? I don't know. You know what I mean? Like, those are things to think about, like making those sorts of choices. And same for AEW. If you've got like Darby Allin and Danhausen and all these guys that are on Dynamite, you've got to be thinking about why they're there. Same sort of thing. Why are they there? How are they appealing to the audience that we're trying to capture? You know, and then, you know, who is going to challenge these people? They've got to feel legitimate, but there are so many people that, you know, need, you know, more ability and more time or more storytelling than what you can get, because like you've got your main guys or gals already, like your Moxleys and Omegas and whatnot. So you've got those guys, but you need to bring along more other talent. You need to build your Zack Sabre Juniors or whatever. He's not on that roster, but you know what I mean. You need to build up your Kyle Fletchers. You need to build up your Darby Allins, or Danhausens or whatever else it is. So you need to see that, saying, okay, even if this guy is not exactly, or this gal or whoever is not exactly like the same fit as John Moxley or whoever, we want people to see this young kid or this person or this gal or whoever it is in the same light as what they see Tony Storm or whoever our top guys and gals are. They need to be in that same breath as these other people, or we need them to be feuding with this person that is our top person, because those are our top heels that we do have, So we need to pull them together so that we can have compelling feuds and storylines or whatever else it is for this person or for that person, because they're our money maker. So we need to work around them to make money with them. And meanwhile, our other show is the show where we're like, okay, these people are diamonds in the rough, and eventually they'll get to be on the big time show, or we'll be able to introduce them on the big time show, but we don't think they're quite ready for the full-on prime time position yet. So this is where we're like, not developmental, but we've got more of a grooming program to be like, okay, you guys don't need to carry the weight of like trying to draw us in competition with WWE or whatever. You guys just need to focus in on getting good, getting over, connecting with the fans in whatever role that you're in, and, becoming, our guys, our, whatever. The next guys that people are going to look up to in the future or whatever. And that's what you need to do. You just need to divide up things so that people feel like, and I think TNA needs to do that too. Like I said before, make Explosion a proper show where it's not just one dark match or maybe two dark matches and maybe a little bit of a segment with Gia Miller going around the ring, or, the top 5 moments or whatever else it is and things like that. Make it a proper, show that's your second brand effectively, where the young talent that, you haven't quite polished or aren't quite polished up yet, or aren't quite, TV ready or whatever, main event ready, or haven't got enough sort of going for them at the moment, are sort of just developing. Or same thing for like the older talent that are just sort of like waning and on the way out and whatever else, put them there and then say, okay, cool. This is that place for the more hardcore and more dedicated fans, that will watch sometimes, but it's not the show that we're out there and trying to bring, like, to compete with AEW or compete with WWE or whatever else it is, or the best show. But it's our show to help develop some of our talent that we need to develop. So that's a very good model, I think, for anyone, just to say, okay, we have this one show that is our main show, and WWE is a bit different, but, I think they still have like a proper developmental thing, but, whatever. So, but yeah, they have that kind of, but they still have those people that are on those Raw and SmackDowns and whatnot that don't feel like they've fit in some ways. But then again, you need to have those guys and gals that are there to put other people over, because, like, at a certain point, not everyone can be the star of the show, so to speak. But you need to have, like, what would you say? Like, something more for them. You need to actually be saying, okay, why aren't we going to pull the trigger on this person? Let's just do it, or whatever. Even just for the fans, just for a few months or whatever it is. Let's give the, LA Knight the title. Let's friggin' do it. And then, okay, we'll move on from there, and, we'll do something else. We'll have him lose, and then Gunther will get it, or whatever. And then, we'll go from there. We'll go and have LA Knight chasing it and chasing it and chasing it, whatever. Or whoever chasing it until they get it. So, but yeah, guys, those are some of my thoughts. I know you guys probably know most of this stuff and whatnot. But these are my thoughts mostly on like the issues and like some of my ideas that I think that anyone could use effectively, and I do hope that they use them. So yeah, I'd like to see some of that come around, and I hope some of that is like some of the plan. But anyway, guys, I hope you've enjoyed it, and hope you join me again in another one.